Good morning, folks. The real Captain Kirk here, live from Weather Trends 360 studio here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. It is the 14th of January, Monday morning. A lot to talk about today: cold, snow, and eclipse, and a little bit here at the end about how we do for big Fortune 500 companies planning year ahead. Looking at the snow cover here this morning, about 45% of us have snow on the ground. Average this time of year to be about 39.8%. It's a little above average. Last year, about 41%. North America as a whole, including Canada and Alaska, about 3.3% above average snow cover here this morning, making it the 18th most in 52 years. Looking at snowfall season to date, we filled in a little bit of that snow hole in the Ohio Valley with the system here this past weekend, and the Mid-Atlantic continues. Virginia and North Carolina mountains continue to do very well with their third system this season. Still have that little bit of a snow hole in central New Jersey, eastern PA. Again, we haven't had much snow since that mid-November blizzard, so a little snow deprived for the folks in the eastern PA area, and they're also a little deprived here because the Eagles lost. So if you're feeling a little under the weather here, it's probably part of that and the flu. Flu so far to date, 30 states with widespread. This time last year, about the whole country, 49 states had widespread flu. The virus last year was much more extreme than this year. So again, if you're feeling under the weather, hopefully it's a shorter-lived bug. So again, hope you're feeling better here. But again, most of us are not as severe as we were last year. Looking at this week, a little bit warmer than last year, 13th warmest in 30 years for the nation as a whole. But you already see signs of that colder air moving into the upper plains, Great Lakes, and that'll be heading east. Wettest in 24 years for the nation as a whole, making it the second wettest in 30 years. A lot of rain in the west, and most of that precip in the east is the liquid equivalent, most of that snow. Overall for the U.S., we're going to be talking about the snowiest mid-January period here in 25 years, with a couple big systems here traversing the country. Looking at the next 6 days here, we'll animate the 6-day snowfall outlook. This is this morning. Most of that snow in the mid-Atlantic has already moved out to sea. Again, so not much snow across the country today. Tomorrow, again, some systems in the Rockies. Expands a little bit on Wednesday. Thursday, we start to see signs of this next big storm system. Friday, you see it developing in the plains, moving across the Midwest. This system will be a little bit more north of the last system. So again, more for the big cities from Des Moines, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, heading into the northeast. We'll see if this turns into a big nor'easter. We have a little more blocking in the Atlantic, high pressure blocking, so this would allow the system to hopefully come up the East Coast, as most models are suggesting. The rain-snow line may be a little iffy here, so if you're in the Philly to New York area, you're going to be on the fence here. That could be ice to rain and maybe back to snow. This might be more of a traditional Appalachian Mountain type of snow event, but it does look to be a big event here Saturday into Sunday across the east. We'll go through these one more time here again today, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, we see the system again developing, Saturday, and then it really hopefully explodes for snow lovers. This looks almost certainty again in terms of the interior part of this. Definitely a big storm for folks in the West Virginia, Pennsylvania, interior New York. So we'll see about the big cities here. A lot of time here for the models to get a better consensus on this. If we don't, unfortunately, we're probably, if we don't get the snow, we're probably still going to have the clouds and storm for the big eclipse Sunday night. This is a nationwide lunar eclipse, so Sunday evening. So if you don't have cloudy weather, you'll definitely be treated to a show here Sunday evening. Looking at next week, we see that for the U.S. overall, we see that big cold blast for the eastern half of the country, making it the coldest in 11 years for the nation as a whole. That's the fourth coldest in 30 years. So this is pretty cold here for the last full week of January. And again, we see that liquid equivalent or precip of conveyor belt of moisture from the deep south into the northeast. Most of that, again, north of the Pennsylvania-Maryland border area is snowfall. So again, there's definitely a wet week, stormy week, but again, a lot of that in the interior part with snow, making it the wettest in 30 years and the snowiest in 14 years for the U.S. overall. If we look at the snowfall potential for week 2 here, again, take this with a grain of salt. This is a model interpretation, but again, it shows that big, heavy swath of snow going across the Midwest and then up the East Coast. But again, if you notice from Philly to New York and point south, TBD on that. This may be a snow to rain to ice event. We'll see, just exact track. But the good news is there's another big storm out there. Again, Saturday, Sunday is the time to watch for that. Looking at the world overall, this is just a 2-week outlook aggregate for the 14th through 27th period. Again, we see most of the really cold weather has left Siberia. It's moved into the Arctic and heading into eastern North America, eastern Canada, and the U.S. So overall for the U.S. for this latter half of January, we're going to be the coldest in 11 years nationally, the wettest in 30 years, which translates to the snowiest in 8 years. So again, a lot of snow and cold out there. Again, pattern pretty much has made a wholesale change from what we had in December. Again, so for cold and snow lovers, keep the faith. Looks like a good pattern here for you. Thought real quick we just end with a little bit of how we help big retail, Wall Street, agriculture, supply side companies with our year ahead statistical analysis. This inspiration started with me about 30 years ago. Worked for this pretty famous general. If you don't know who he is, you're probably under the age of 30. But General Storman Norman Schwarzkopf was kind of a visionary when it came to using weather. We work with, again, some of America's most admired companies in the retail side, supply side, really anyone that makes a seasonal product or has a retail outlet. We're trying to help them with that inventory a year ahead. So the goal is to just analyze their information, figure out what weather's driving their sales, and then ultimately to predict those sales. We call this the power of 1 degree. So it's the significance of 1 degree of change on cold seasonal merchandise. So every degree colder, we tend to drink about 2% more coffee. So if it's 10 degrees colder, going to be 20% increase in coffee sales. Jeans, every degree colder, about 2% increase. Some of the really hardline goods and electric blankets and on have really a lot of volatility, 5, 10, 24% increases for every degree colder. So I thought we'd translate that into next week when we have a pretty big change from a year ago. Last year was, again, one of the warmest in decades, very warm for the last week of January. This year we're talking about the coldest since about 2003-ish. So again, at least 12.6 degrees colder nationally than last year. And so if we translate those rules of thumb, every degree colder, so if we're 12.6 degrees colder nationally, times 2%, we have about a 25% increase in coffee sales next week, 38% increase in birdseed sales, again, 4% every degree colder for antifreeze, so about a 50% increase next year over year for sales. Unfortunately, your electric bill probably going to be up pretty significantly, up 63% for that week. Fire logs, again, very, very volatile, some of these categories, 101% increase in sales. Again, a lot of that's going to come in this area of the country. Obviously here in Northern California, it's going to trend much, much warmer than the year prior for that last week of January. So not much demand here for these seasonal items, but huge demand for a vast majority of the U.S. And then things like electric blankets can actually just go off the charts here with about a 302% increase. So again, that's kind of how we try to quantify the change in the weather and what it means for sales. If you know that a year ahead, again, we use a statistical 24 climate cycle model approach, temp, rain, and snow a year ahead everywhere in the world by mile out a year. You can predict how much inventory you need, when to promote, when to advertise. So really it's the business side of weather that we're really trying to help folks with. So with that, folks, we hope you have a great week, and we will be back here this time next week. Talk to you soon.